A very warm welcome to IDFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 13. I'm Ritwika Gupta and today we are diving into the fast evolving business of Indian weddings. From how planners are scaling creativity to how design entrepreneurs are redefining personalization, we decode what's shaping the wedding market. In the first segment, I speak to Devanshi Patel, founder of Shreem Events, and in the second segment, a conversation lined up with Ranjani Iyengar, founder of Pink Whistle Man. Devanshi, welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow. Pleasure to chat with you today.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So, we are approaching one of the busiest seasons of the year, the wedding season. And I want to just know from you, what are the big trends are you seeing, in the coming year?
Oh, it's my favorite season, firstly. Let me tell you, we are entering into chaos with a lot of glamour, I would say.
Right.
I think this time for 2025 and 2026, it's been a little different.
Sure.
People are approaching the entire wedding season with a lot of luxury, lot of controlled environment when it comes to sustainability.
Okay.
People are looking at hyper personalization, like let it be your welcome note to your welcome drinks to an after party. Every single thing is personalized with your story. I would say some classics have always been there in terms of color combinations, in terms of decor, how it looks like, and in terms of even like food and beverages. People are now putting attention in a lot of how to come up with great food ideas, great beverages, giving like an amazing experience to the guest. It's also like experience driven.
Right.
So it's no more like, you have a set plan or a set schedule and everyone's just doing that, and where it's less interactive and just meeting the couple for reception.
Sure.
But it's become where every touch point has become very experience centric, I would say.
Fantastic. Now, destination weddings were always popular, but I think it took a hit during the COVID period, but now it's back again. But we're also seeing a lot of intimate weddings, a lot of culturally blended weddings, right? What are the major segments do you see the most traction in right now?
So I feel destination weddings have just grown after COVID, like when people knew that they cannot travel, and just when the COVID ended, luckily, people started going even more out. The weddings that used to happen in their own cities, now they've started to go in the outskirts of cities for people who can't travel a lot. In India, I would say Rajasthan, Goa always, has been the popular ones, and they've been doing great weddings because they have the infrastructure of that. But even internationally, newer places have opened up. Japan has opened up. Abu Dhabi, people are reaching out to destinations that's unspoken about or untried, I would say. So that's definitely on the rise in terms of destination wedding.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the wedding business, the wedding industry, it is a strongly competitive industry, right? Tell me, what has been your biggest differentiator?
So, to be very honest, wedding business is very different from a product or a brand business. Here we're dealing with a lot of emotions, and every couple I meet today, I still start with a story that, how did you guys meet? Tell me more about yourself. Tell me how your parents got married. What's the culture that you follow? Can we imbibe all of these, into your wedding? Let it be a story that people should know about. So that's been a major structure in terms of how we operate. And also like creativity with like a little bit of discipline. So because we travel, we are lucky enough to go places to get inspiration from a different kind of a country or food that we eat or the design that we see or the art that we see. And then we try to incorporate them into the weddings. Keeping the ideas original. We never would want to do something which is copy pasted, that I saw this at a wedding over here and I'd want to replicate it. I'm the first person to say that let's not do that. Let's come up with an original idea and let's set trends instead of just following them. And I mean, we've been lucky that the kind of clientele we deal with, they also agree majorly to what we say. We also bring a lot of transparency when we are working. So, and a lot of quality clients do appreciate this. So they understand that the kind of creativity we get onto the table is very different to what others would be having outside.
Talk to us about some of the challenges, some of the scaling challenges or operational challenges a business like yours, faces, when they are starting out, especially when you are trying to grow Shreem Events.
So yes, I could go on and on, but there are some challenges which we face day to day. So firstly, I would say that getting the right team is very important.
Sure.
Like, it's not just led by one founder or one company head or something, or maybe even like 2-3 people in the company. The entire team has to align to the vision. They should be creative enough. So, like putting in protocols in place, SOPs in place, where they understand what an HNI client really requires, and then to recommend what, we give as original ideas or what we bring to the table. That's been our major challenge. Secondly, I would say that, over the years, it's taken us time to explain this to our clients as well, that because now they have a lot of exposure, they would see something and they'll want that. But for us to tell them that it has to be your personal story, it has to be your love story or your family story that needs to come out. But luckily now that's also been in process, where people have kind of figured that out. And the third one, I would say that it's operations. Like, I have literally learned in every single event how to have a plan B. Like, how much ever we've planned. I mean, I would have no shame to mention this, that even if you plan 100%, there's always going to be something which is unplanned that's going to come up. So crisis management has been like a biggest thing that I would tell everybody to look into as the first point when it comes to challenges.
I also would understand that, you work with a lot of small vendors, like your decor, logistics, entertainment, food, right? So all these smaller vendors also play a big part. Tell me, how did you build your vendor ecosystem, and what role do they really play in the larger industry as well?
So, of course, like this ecosystem we've built over the years, having our relationships with them, in terms of making sure that we are fair to their deals. We don't want to be unethical at any given point of time, making them crunch down just because our client wants it or that's a demand by a client. So we make sure we respect their art. Secondly, we make sure that we respect their timeline as well. So over the years, we've built this ecosystem where we have great relationship with them. They love working with us because of our fair attitude towards them and making sure that they are also getting what they've demanded for or they've asked for. Nobody's unreasonable. Like, we just need to understand why they need it.
Right. And what role has social media played in strengthening your brand?
So, to be very honest, gone are the days when people used to send like presentations or, profiles. Now your Instagram or your YouTube or Facebook has become your profile. Like, 90% of the time when a client was reaching out to us, they'll be like, okay, we've seen your Instagram, you do some amazing work, or they've seen like the BTS of what we've done in the weddings, and they're like, oh, that was very well handled, or what you thought of. So for us also, apart from like wedding planning content has also become like a very big role in the kind of organization that we work with, because everything needs to be narrated out. And it's luckily like 99% of our clients are word of mouth clients, but even then they end up going to our social media pages to see what we've done. And they would not demand like a presentation. They would say, oh, I've seen this decor at this place, or oh, I've seen you've done a wedding in Udaipur at this property, or I know you have experience in Thailand for doing like a great wedding or something. So they end up like scrolling out through it.
Someone recently just told me that the wedding industry in India is recession-proof. Do you agree with that?
I fully agree. As much as it's recession-proof for babies, because they are not going to stop being produced, the weddings are the same thing. I think it's where people think that they have emotion, they want to make this a big day. They've grown up seeing movies and they've grown up seeing how their big day should be.
Right, it's a multi-billion-dollar business here in India, and I'm sure there's a space for everyone. But it looks very glamorous from the outside, but I'm sure it's a lot of hard work. As we are wrapping up this conversation, tell me, for an entrepreneur who wants to enter the wedding planning industry, what are the key things he or she should keep in mind?
I think the first point would be resilience. Like you mentioned that, the industry is very glamorous. There is, let's say, like an artist performing like a J-Lo someday versus an A.R. Rahman performing someday. But as much as what you see on social media or on television or in videos, there are like sleepless nights that go behind it. So how to be calm in that chaos is the first thing anybody should learn. Because once you panic, everyone around you is going to panic. So that's the first thing I would say. Second is empathy and being ethical. Like the families that we deal with, or the bride and the groom that's getting married, they have a lot of emotion stuck to this entire celebration.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to be ethical to them, who else should they trust on? So that's something that I always keep my foot forward to tell everyone, that you need to have that empathy towards the family, or be like very ethical enough to run that. And third is never hold back your creativity. Like if you're not going to get inspired with what you see around or what you learn each day, you will get stuck some point of life. So just try being creative and have the discipline to execute what you've thought. Like, I mean, I would come up with a million of ideas which are original, but how are we going to execute that?
Right.
Especially in the location that's chosen, budgets that's kept in mind. So that's very important, like to have logic behind what's been also suggested.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad we could actually catch up with you before you get busy. It was a lovely conversation, Devanshi.
Pleasure
Thank you so
is
much.
all mine. I hope the wedding season which is coming is lucky for everyone.
It's time for a quick break here. We'll be back shortly. Stay tuned. Welcome back to IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 13. In this segment, we explore the craft and commerce of wedding invitations with Ranjani Iyengar, founder of Pink Whistle Man. Listen in. Ranjani, welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow. It's a pleasure to be chatting with you, especially amidst the wedding season, that we are really in the middle of. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real honor to be here.
So, Ranjani, let's start from the very beginning. Pink Whistle Man, first of all, it's a very quirky name. I want to know, what it's inspired you to, start this company, and, were you trying to solve a problem in the market that perhaps existed?
So honestly, I think where my journey started had nothing to do with weddings. I was a civil engineer by background. I wanted to do something with design. I think I was looking at more interior designing and on those lines. But I think it took me in a very different direction. I got into a software company. But what I realized in all of this was how you can use design in literally any medium and make it interesting. Even if it's like dry stats, or if you have to make like a presentation which is very org specific. I think there was always a storytelling model that I like to sort of include. And this also, when I moved to a consulting company, I was able to show results. Like there was a 40% increase in revenue in just the first year that I joined, purely because of how I sort of included storytelling into like a very technical sort of role. So naturally, when I was getting married and I had to make my own wedding invitation, I think I wanted to bring in that whole storytelling model and bring in emotion and personalization, and that's where it started. And I think this was back in 2012. So when I was looking for customized invitations or stationery, there was a gap in the market at that point, and I didn't find that level of personalization available, which is how it started. And then gradually it took form. I think it evolved over the years. It took me 2 years to after that, where I would do stuff for friends and family, and then it started spreading to like external circles. And then I decided to quit my job, full-time job, and kickstart Pink Whistle Man. But over time, I think it has definitely evolved. It started off with a broader perspective of design, with branding and logos and everything. But gradually I narrowed it down to weddings because I felt like the scope to experiment was the most here.
Right, no, absolutely, because when we speak of wedding invitations, it's a very niche space.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I would presume that you will need to have an understanding of the couple's journey, and probably know a little bit about each one of them. It needs to be a deeply immersive experience, right? So how do you translate that narrative into a visual, and tactical experience?
So I think even with my clients, what I do is I keep the conversations going very fluidly, very informally. I don't do specific set calls like a Zoom meeting and a questionnaire and all of that. I keep it very fluid because I feel like creativity especially comes out the best when it's interactive and it's light. So, and in all of this I try to find an essence, because this is that one spark that I try to look for with every couple, and it exists irrespective of whether it's a love marriage or an arranged marriage. They don't necessarily have to come with a long history or a story that they have, but there's always that little spark. There's this one arranged marriage sort of couple that I'm doing the wedding of now, and I think the essence I got from everything was a prism. And as we were building the concept, the invitation is starting to form and look like a prism, because there's also like that pure white light, but that spreads out into a spectrum.
Right.
So somehow that prism has become the underlying essence, but there's a story to tell around that. Then obviously there are other things and interests of theirs that we're trying to weave in. But yeah, I think that's how I like to look at it. I almost look at it as a Venn diagram with a bunch of words that are there in terms of the wedding theme and their personalities, and in all of that it sort of when you distill it down, there's one really nice word that comes up, which sort of becomes the foundation to my invitation.
Fantastic. Ranjani, tell us a little bit about your supply chain. I assume you work with a lot of specialty papers, artisans, printers, right? So take us through the entire, workflow, and how do you build reliability in each of these aspects?
There's a steady supply chain that I have built over the years, where it's like printing and papers, and there are vendors that I work with continuously, and that is a sort of fixed model. But also, like I said, say for example, in this prism case, I need to figure out how to aesthetically design a prism, like understand its inner workings, but still also model it in different ways. I have to look for vendors who can sort of help me with that level of customization. So in that case, then I have to go around looking for artisans. And there was this other wedding where for the Merchant Ambani wedding, I worked with weavers and karigars from a very small, very modest gully in Bombay. And in fact, one of the weavers, I realized later, his work is up in the Buckingham Palace. You would never expect that to come, from such modest beginnings. So I think to sort of go and look and find these vendors is part of the process, because every project is completely different. Maybe I may never work with a prism vendor again. I may never work with there was one invitation where I worked with all junk or upcycling automobile parts, and I worked with a garage basically. So I may not have to work with them again, but the one time that I do work with them, in certain cases, I try to follow a fair price model, or sometimes even more of a little more than a fair price, because I think it's very exciting for them as well, and I also keep them in loop for the larger picture of what they're building. So I think that sort of builds that excitement, the trust, and that rapport with different vendors, and it definitely, I think, goes a long way in even building connections further if I want to work with them again.
Sure. Ranjani, for design-led MSMEs or startups, right, I think access to credit and institutional capital is often limited. Have you explored external funding? If not, what is the ideal financial ecosystem that a business like yours, should operate in?
I think when it's an art and a business combination, I've personally been torn whether I'm an artist or a business person. That's been a very fine line to balance. And over time, I think I found a sweet spot. We're completely bootstrapped, and in the next foreseeable future as well, we're going to be bootstrapped. Because how I look at scalability is, to basically have the freedom to create and not volume centric, not something where we're just racing targets and trying to just take in as much work as possible, because I feel like creativity doesn't flow in that model, and then it starts to become very administrative if it goes down that road.
Sure.
So I try to look at it as a market that's getting niche by the second, where we have access to more intricate work, we have access to a wider scale of artisans across the country. And that in itself is how I'm looking at growth year on year. And also the team that we have, I insist that because there is a burnout period also that happens post weddings. So we take time off, there's no pressure at that time. So we try to go on retreats, we go for residencies, whether it's artist residencies or writing residencies or spiritual residencies, because I feel like upskilling ourselves is a very important part of what we do.
Sure.
So I think that's where the ecosystem is in terms of financial funding as well.
These days I'm seeing like invites being forwarded over WhatsApp. Invites are played as reels on Instagram. So this digitization, digital invites, have really been on the rise. Tell me, how do you think technology will really impact your business?
Technology already has impacted our business, and I think during COVID is when we saw a surge of these digital invitations, because at that point this was the only way you could pass on information. And I'm grateful for that period, because I think, no offense, but in terms of our business, I think that's how we were able to access a larger market in terms of the HNI market especially, because we would be classified as a more quirky or brand which they wouldn't particularly reach out to earlier. This opened up a whole new avenue of how even HNI started looking at invitations and how they wanted to explore creativity in a larger scale. Having said that, I feel like digital invites are also reaching a certain level of saturation, because I think it is getting a little overdone, and then people are moving back to physical invitations, but also like experience-based ones. Or even if you're doing digital invites, we are also seeing where we can up the game and make it more interactive, gamify it maybe, bring in a little bit of AI if necessary. So there is going to be a constant need for evolution, because anything will saturate the market after a point.
Right. I think your brand has a lot of social media visibility, right? Tell me, how much of a role has social media played in really making Pink Missile Man stronger as a brand?
I think social media has definitely been a huge game changer. And I think that's again a tool, if used correctly, can enormously benefit all of us. So there is a wide reach that I've had because of social media, whether it's countries that I've worked with. I've been able to work with close to 18 countries, and I do a lot of HNI weddings with the Napa Valley market and the New York market, but this has all happened purely because of social media. And I also tend to do a sanity check of our social media every 6 months to see if there's something that we want to sort of specifically work with, right? So I declutter it, remove some work that I don't want to work on anymore. Right. And I feel like this also helps in attracting the right clientele all the time. I think this is where I see social media having benefited us hugely.
Fantastic. And finally, Ranjani, tell us, for all the aspiring, design entrepreneurs who are watching the show today, what would your piece of advice be, for them, and if they want to enter the industry?
I think every business has its own unique USP. If you ask me, I'm sure my business model, like I said, is probably the outcome I'm looking for is very different. But I think it's very important to stay authentic to what an individual wants. If it's volume, great. If it's something niche, that's great. But I think to maintain that USP and the uniqueness of what their voice is I think primarily important. And then I think it evolves from there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Ranjani, for your time. This was an absolute pleasure.
Same here.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 13. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.